I shouldn't even be here. I mean, I forgot his birthday, but that's not really the point. The point is that now I'm staring at her, and nothing about this feels simple. The way she leans over the counter, scanning the rows of notebooks as if she owns the place, like she's perfectly at home in this chaos of stacked paper and half-open novels, makes it impossible for me to act normal. She's older, not in a harsh way, not too old or unreachable, just older, the kind of woman who moves with certainty, who doesn't apologize for taking up space, and somehow makes me feel like I'm the one intruding. Her hair catches the late afternoon light through the bookstore window, streaks of gray mingling with the chestnut brown, and I can't stop noticing. The subtle way her fingers trace the edges of a spine, lingering for a second too long. That kind of attention to detail, it's impossible not to notice. I shuffle closer to the counter, pretending I'm just looking at a book. My eyes keep finding hers, even when she doesn't notice, and there's this tension, like a wire stretched tight between us. She glances up for a second, just a flicker, and I swear it's like she sees right through the stupid jokes I try to tell myself to calm down. There's a pause, a brief stall in time, and I can't decide if it's curiosity, amusement, or something else entirely in the way she's looking. She doesn't smile. She doesn't frown. She just acknowledges me, and it's more than enough. I clear my throat, pretending to inspect a shelf. I'm supposed to be here for work, inventory, organizing, the usual stuff, but my hands keep brushing the books in a way that's not really productive. I feel her eyes on me, though I try not to look. There's this small moment, tiny, meaningless in another context, but she sets down the notebook she was holding and moves a chair out of the way for me without a word. Thanks, I mutter, embarrassed by the sudden, unnecessary closeness. She just nods, not looking at me, but her hand lingers on the chair for a second longer than needed. And my chest tightens. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I barely know her. A handful of casual interactions, some shared laughs over coffee she never drinks, and 100 silent moments where we both say less than we want. But I can't stop thinking about that pause, the one where the air between us almost vibrates, where it feels like time itself hesitated just so we could exist there together. I glance at the clock. Another 10 minutes, and I have to go. Back to the apartment. Back to a day that's going to feel emptier, because she's here, and I'm not talking to her enough. I want to ask her something. Anything. But the words get stuck somewhere between my stomach and my throat. And then, as if reading my thoughts, she turns and smiles just a fraction. Not a real smile. Not a promise. But a hint, a trace, a brush of warmth against the skin of my thoughts. I step back, nod awkwardly, and for no reason at all, my eyes linger. Just a little too long. She doesn't notice, or maybe she does, but I'll never know. And as I leave the bookstore, my hands empty, my chest tight, I can't stop thinking about that tiny smile, the faintest spark in her eyes, and the way it made everything else, everything stupid I thought I understood about myself, suddenly irrelevant. I forgot his birthday, but right now, I'm starting to realize maybe I'll never forget her. I didn't mean to be there so late. The bookstore had emptied, the bell above the door silent for the last half hour, and yet I found myself lingering near the back, helping her carry a stack of new arrivals to the shelves. My arms were full, but somehow hers looked heavier. She kept shifting them, adjusting, tightening her grip, as if she didn't trust me to notice that she was tired. "You're carrying too much," I said, trying to sound casual, though my voice probably came out sharper than intended. She shook her head without looking at me. "I've been doing this long enough. I can handle it." Her laugh was quiet, but it hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. A small, fleeting sound, like a bell in a foggy room. I realized I was staring at her hands. The way her knuckles whitened when she gripped the stack of books, the faint lines from years of movement, from careful, deliberate gestures. It was absurd, noticing something so ordinary, and yet I couldn't look away. "You look tired," I added, softer this time, unsure if I had any right to say it. Her eyes flicked up, meeting mine for a fraction of a second. There was a pause, a hesitation that made the air between us taut, almost uncomfortable. Then she nodded, almost imperceptibly, and looked away. Her shoulders sagged, just a little. She didn't admit it out loud, didn't explain it, but the tiny surrender in her posture spoke volumes. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I shifted the weight of the books I was holding, trying to pretend it was all casual, while my eyes kept tracking the subtle movements of hers. The way she adjusted a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the slight furrow of her brow, the way she exhaled without even realizing it. There was something magnetic in her restraint, in the careful way she controlled her expression, hiding vulnerability behind competence. And maybe that's why I stayed. Because I could feel it under the surface, that quiet pull of energy I wasn't supposed to acknowledge, and yet couldn't stop noticing. "Careful with that shelf," I said, moving to help her arrange a row of tall books. Our hands brushed briefly, too brief to matter, but enough to make the space between us feel smaller, tighter. She didn't recoil, didn't pull away, but she didn't linger either. Her eyes darted to the floor for a second, and in that movement, I caught a flicker of something she wasn't sharing. Fatigue, or maybe something more. We worked in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the soft shuffle of pages and our synchronized breathing. It was quiet, but heavy, weighted with things neither of us would say aloud. And yet, in that quiet, in that slow, deliberate proximity, there was something electric, though neither of us admitted it. When she finally straightened, her gaze met mine for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and I swear I could feel the pull of her energy, restrained but undeniable. It wasn't a look of invitation. Not really. Just presence. And yet it was enough to make my chest tighten and my thoughts wander to places I shouldn't. I stepped back, pretending to adjust my grip on the books, but I couldn't hide the way my fingers tingled from that brief contact. She didn't notice, or maybe she did. I'll never know. And as we both turned to face the next row of shelves, I felt it again. That subtle, forbidden pull, the weight of unspoken things pressing quietly between us. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The rain started softly, tapping against the tall bookstore windows, and somehow it made the space feel smaller, more intimate than it should have. I was shelving the last of the new arrivals, and she was standing beside me, brushing dust off a row of worn paperbacks. Our shoulders kept brushing, accidental but deliberate enough to make me pause mid-movement. "You always work late?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though my voice betrayed more curiosity than I intended. She didn't answer immediately, just tilted her head, looking out the rain-streaked glass, as if weighing whether to tell me something or whether she should. I noticed the faint crease in her forehead, the way her lips pressed together when she considered me, and I felt the quiet tug of wanting to reach out, to do something, anything, that would close the space between us. "Sometimes," she finally said, voice low, almost hesitant. "When it's quiet." I wanted to ask her what she meant, wanted to press on, but I stopped myself. There was a line there I wasn't allowed to cross, not really. But the electricity in the air made it feel like if I leaned just a little closer, everything would change. The thunder outside startled both of us. She flinched, just slightly, and I caught her hand as it brushed against a shelf. My fingers lingered for a fraction of a second, too long for casual contact, but not long enough to count, and I felt the sudden rush of heat in my chest. She looked down at her hand, then back at me, and there was that pause again, the one that made my stomach twist. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I wanted to be here, fully, but the outside world kept intruding. And then her phone rang, unexpectedly loud in the quiet room. I glimpsed the name flashing on the screen, paused, and she let out a soft, almost guilty sigh. "Sorry," she said, hesitating before sliding the call to voicemail. Her hand hovered over the screen for a second longer than necessary, like she was debating something she couldn't say. I wanted to say something, anything, to tell her it was okay, that she didn't have to explain, but instead I stayed quiet. The rain continued, relentless but gentle, and the space between us felt charged, alive, as though the storm outside mirrored the tension building inside. We worked in silence again, but closer now. My hand brushed against hers once more as I passed a book, a fleeting touch that seemed weighted with all the things neither of us would voice. Her breath hitched slightly, almost imperceptibly, and I caught the quick flicker of emotion in her eyes. Confusion, hesitation, a kind of longing she wouldn't admit aloud. The moment stretched. I wanted to say her name, wanted to close the distance, but something held me back. Common sense, maybe, or fear of destroying the fragile rhythm we'd found. Instead, I let my hand linger near hers, stopped just shy of the impossible. And then she moved slightly, reorganizing the shelf, and the electricity dissipated, leaving a quiet ache behind. I wanted to reach for her again, to let her know I understood, but instead I stepped back, pretending to adjust a stack of books. My chest felt tight, but I didn't speak. And as the rain continued to drum against the windows, I realized that almost everything could have changed in that tiny, fleeting moment. But it hadn't. Not yet. We were sitting on the worn leather couch in the bookstore's back office, the storm still rattling the windows. The air smelled faintly of old paper and coffee she hadn't finished this morning. I had been staring at the floor for the past 10 minutes, pretending to organize invoices I didn't need to touch, while she ran her fingers along the edge of the desk, tracing invisible lines. "Do you ever wonder why we're even here?" Her voice was soft, almost swallowed by the rain. I looked up, startled, because she rarely asked questions like that. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual, though my chest tightened. She exhaled slowly, as if the act of speaking had already exhausted her. "I mean this. Us. These moments where we pretend everything is normal, when it's not. I can't keep ignoring it." I swallowed. The air felt heavier suddenly, like it had thickened around us, and I realized I had been holding my breath without noticing. My fingers itched to reach for hers, but I stayed still, just watching, waiting. She didn't look at me, not directly. Her gaze hovered over the desk, over the stacks of paper, over the window where the rain blurred the city lights. And yet, somehow, she was looking straight at me. I could feel the weight of her honesty pressing into my chest. "I don't know what's happening," she admitted finally, voice cracking just slightly. "I don't know why I feel like this, and I don't know if I should feel it at all." Her confession hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I had been feeling it too, the tension, the pull, the moments where it seemed impossible to breathe without thinking about her. But hearing it out loud, in her voice, made it tangible. Real. Dangerous. I think I understand," I said, though my words felt hollow even to me. "I think I feel the same. But I don't. I don't want to ruin anything." She finally met my eyes then, and it was like someone had pulled the curtains back. Vulnerability, confusion, longing, it was all there, unmasked, and I didn't know how to respond. Her lips parted as if to say more, but nothing came. Silence stretched between us, long and fragile, louder than any words we could offer. And in that silence, I realized we could no longer pretend. The glances, the touches, the small unspoken moments, they weren't normal. We weren't normal. Not anymore. "I don't think I can keep pretending," she whispered finally, almost breaking. "Not after this, not after feeling this way, even once. I don't know what to do with it. With us." I wanted to reach out, to say something, to promise her anything that could make this less terrifying. But my hand stayed in my lap. My throat tightened. I could only nod, because any other answer would have been a lie. And then she said it, the words that settled in my chest and refused to leave. "I'm scared I'll ruin you just by being here." I didn't expect her to open up again so soon. We were back in the office, rain finally letting up outside, leaving a damp smell that clung to the corners of the room. She was leaning against the edge of the desk, a small stack of papers in her hand, but she wasn't paying attention to them. Her eyes were distant, fixed somewhere behind me, and I felt that familiar pull, the one I couldn't stop noticing. "Do you ever regret things?" she asked suddenly, almost quietly, like testing the air to see if it could carry her confession. "What kind of things?" I asked, wary. I didn't want to push, but the tension made my throat tight. "The past," she said, letting out a shaky breath. "People you loved, lost, or maybe never had a chance to." Her gaze dropped to her hands, twisting a corner of a sheet of paper. I thought I had it all figured out. And then I didn't. I lost someone I shouldn't have. And somehow, I'm still carrying it. I froze, because in a weird, quiet way, she reminded me of someone I'd lost too. Someone I hadn't even admitted to missing. The thought made my stomach clench. I wanted to say something comforting, but words felt clumsy, inadequate. I shifted slightly and pointed to an old photograph that had been tucked behind the counter. A snapshot of the store from years ago. That was taken on her last birthday. I murmured, almost to myself. She loved this place, always came in just to pick up one book and leave. Her head tilted, just a fraction, and I noticed a tremor in her fingers. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the way her chest tightened, the way her lips pressed together as if holding back a flood of emotion. And in that moment, I understood that she was seeing more than just the photograph. She was seeing all the things she'd lost, all the mistakes she'd carried silently. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the space between us, but I hesitated. I didn't know if she wanted comfort, or just the silence to sift through her own thoughts. Instead, I just sat there, letting the quiet do what words could not. Then she spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't ready for that. Not then, and maybe I'm still not. But I don't want to pretend anymore that I'm fine. Her honesty hit me harder than anything else ever could. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't shouting or crying. It was raw, quiet, and completely human. She was standing there, admitting vulnerability without asking for it to be fixed, and I realized how much I wanted to be the one who could just understand her. I glanced down at my hands, then back at her. She wasn't looking for a solution. She was looking to be seen. And in that silent acknowledgement, my chest tightened in a way I couldn't ignore. Finally, she moved closer, almost imperceptibly, carrying the weight of everything she hadn't said. Her fingers brushed mine, not deliberately, but with that same chaotic intimacy that made every second between us feel impossible to forget. I've carried this for too long, she said, softly, almost as if talking to herself. Maybe it's time someone knew. And just like that, the world shifted. Quietly, trembling beneath us. A soft seismic moment that left my heart pounding and my mind already replaying every detail of her confession over and over until I couldn't tell where her past ended and what was happening now began. The bookstore was empty again, quieter than usual, the faint hum of the overhead lights filling the spaces between us. We sat on the worn couch in the back office, side by side, the stacks of books around us somehow making the room feel smaller, safer, like the rest of the world had paused. She didn't say anything at first, just leaned back slightly, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Her hand rested near mine on the armrest, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin through the fabric, but not touching. And yet, that nearness carried a weight I couldn't ignore. She started, then stopped, letting the words falter. I didn't rush her. I just waited. I've been afraid, she continued finally, voice low, unsteady, that feeling something again could be dangerous, or stupid, or temporary. She glanced at me out of the corner of her eye, then looked away, blinking against some unspoken memory. I nodded, understanding more than I could express. I'd been afraid too, afraid of the pull, the intensity, the way my thoughts kept returning to her, over and over. But the fear didn't feel like the right reason to stay apart anymore. We didn't speak for a while, just sat there. The quiet between us wasn't uncomfortable, it was full. Full of the tiny admissions, the hesitations, the nearly shared confessions that had been building over weeks. Then, without thinking, my hand moved closer, brushing against hers. She didn't pull away. She didn't move forward either. Our fingers touched lightly, almost accidentally, but the contact was enough. Enough to seal all the little confessions that had gone unsaid, the tension that had been holding us in half-truths. She exhaled again, this time slower, softer, as if letting go of something she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. I mirrored her breath, letting the rhythm of the moment ground me. No words were needed. None of the overthinking, the apologies, the hesitations mattered now. Her head tilted slightly toward me, not fully resting, just close enough that I felt the heat of her presence, The familiarity that had grown through late nights, brief touches, and shared silences. We didn't need labels or declarations. We just were. The space between us had shifted, subtly but irrevocably. I finally let my fingers entwine with hers, slow, careful, not needing to speak the feelings that neither of us had been able to name aloud. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't fireworks or melodrama. It was just recognition, understanding. Two people who had carried their fears, their regrets, their longing, and found a quiet accord in the midst of it. We sat that way for a long time, the storm long gone outside, the bookstore resting in its usual hum of stillness. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was human, and somehow, that made it more than enough. Finally, she shifted, settling a little closer, and I leaned slightly toward her, not dramatically, not suddenly, just enough that the contact became natural, inevitable. Fingers still intertwined. No words, no promises, just presence. And in that stillness, I realized that everything we hadn't said, all the pauses and hesitations, the near confessions and almost moments, had led us here. A quiet finality. Nothing flashy, just belonging. It's quiet now. The bookstore is closed, lights dimmed, and I'm standing by the window, watching the streetlights flicker against the early evening mist. Months have passed since that night. The night we finally let ourselves exist without pretense, without fear. And yet, the memory of it still lingers, soft but sharp, like a scent you recognize long after the person is gone. I've learned things about her I never expected. About how a woman can carry grief, longing, and love all at once, and still command a presence so strong it pulls the world toward her. About the way vulnerability doesn't always need words, how a glance, a pause, a simple brush of hands can hold more meaning than 1,000 declarations. And I've learned things about myself. How a younger man can be patient without being passive, observant without being intrusive, how love, or something like it, can grow quietly, invisibly, until it becomes inevitable. I've learned that some connections are earned in the smallest moments, in silences and near misses, in almost everything that happens in between. She's changed too, not in big, sweeping ways, but in ways that matter. She lets herself pause now, notices when someone else needs a moment of kindness, allows herself small sparks of trust without suspicion. I watch her sometimes, smiling softly at a customer, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, and I'm reminded how subtle shifts can hold entire worlds. We don't have grand declarations or perfect endings, but we have presence, and that has proven enough. We've learned to be honest in silence, to accept the tension, the near misses, the longing, and still exist side by side. We've learned that love isn't always fireworks. It's recognition, timing, understanding, and quiet persistence. Sometimes I catch her looking at me, and there's that tiny, knowing spark, the one that says, I see you. I know you. And it's enough. It always will be. I lean against the window, feeling the cool glass under my hand, and I realize the story isn't over. It's just moving at its own pace, slow, deliberate, human. And maybe that's the best part. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?